Hey everybody, welcome to The Money Perspective. I'm Eduardo.
And I'm Brandon.
And I love money, let me tell you. So we are going to be discussing how much money you need to comfortably live in LA, Los Angeles to be precise. And yeah, so Brandon, how much money do you need to live comfortably in Los Angeles?
Okay, so first of all, this idea came up because I've seen this in a number of different places, but according to this article, which references a study from Purdue University, it says that in order to be happy in California, you should have a minimum annual salary of $149,310 to be happy.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of money, and a lot of Californians definitely don't make that in annual salary.
Yeah. Now, I think that is in California in general, right?
Yeah.
So, how about we get a little more specific, right? What is the definition of living comfortably? What is that?
Yeah, so it's very subjective, and we should say too, you brought up a great point, which is that it's referencing all of California, which includes everything all the way up to Silicon Valley down to San Diego and everything between, right? So things vary wildly, but in general, this really prompts a good idea about money and living in California and being happy. You and I were earlier talking about two general principles or two ideas that people can follow, that we can follow, that lead to a happy, comfortable living.
Right.
One of which is called the 50-30-20 rule.
That's right.
And the other is like a 1/3 rule or something. So,
okay.
You want to explain what the 50-30-20 rule is?
So you're right. You know, I just found out of it before we started recording, right? But from what I understood, right, 50-30-20 rule is 50% of your income should go toward, your living expenses, your basic living expenses, your rent, your, anything needed, anything necessary, gas, all that stuff. 30% of it should be for discretionary use. Like, I think you said Netflix and, fun stuff, going out for dinner, stuff like that. And the last 20 should be for saving, right? Whether it's saving for something or saving for retirement and stuff like that. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yeah, basically you're allocating the amount of money that you make to those three different areas to kind of live comfortably.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have that 1/3 rule. I don't know if there's a proper name for it, but there's this idea that in general, specifically your rent, whatever you pay in rent or mortgage, your actual living expense, is going to be 1/3 of your total income, right? So in this example, if you were to make $149,000 a year, then whatever you're paying in rent or mortgage should be 1/3 of that figure.
Got it. Now, I have a question for you, Brandon. So, one thing that I've always kind of paid attention to is the difference between what you make, for example, in salary or the amount of money you make per hour, in two terms, right? In one, gross, and another as take-home pay. Do you kind of have a definition for what take-home pay is?
Yeah, I think it's really important to realize, I've been looking at a lot of this stuff and trying to figure out, how much money I need to make to live comfortably. And it's weird because every time you're thinking about your job and how much money you're making on paper, your employer always talks to you in terms of annual salary, like your gross pay, right? So you'll sign a contract for employment and they'll say, we'll pay you $50,000 a year, or we'll pay you $60,000 a year.
Right.
And so you might be tempted to think, okay, well, let me divide that number by 12. That's how much money I make per month.
Yeah.
On paper, yes. But in practice, and what actually goes into your pocket, no. Because that's your gross pay. You then need to deduct out how much you're going to pay in taxes.
Right.
In order to figure out what's my actual take-home pay. What am I taking home with me, putting in my pocket, and I can spend it however I want. And that number is very different.
That number is very different.
Yeah.
Take, for example, me, right? I think that my income is taxed about $600 to $700 a month. Not even actually, not even a month. It's every paycheck, which is then twice a month, right? Let's take the lowest number, 600, right? If I'm getting deducted from my gross pay, 600 every paycheck, that means that per month I'm being deducted 1,200, right? So if I make $5,000 a month, really my take home pay is 3,800 a month.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot less.
It's a lot less.
It's a lot less, and it makes a big difference, especially if you're not thinking in terms of take-home pay. You're making the mistake of thinking in terms of gross pay.
Right.
Like, oh, I make $5,000 per month because that's what the math goes out to. Then you might be in trouble because you're using an inflated figure.
Right.
Right. So yeah, it makes a huge difference. Take-home pay versus gross pay.
I wonder what the average rent in LA is actually. How do we find that out?
Yeah, I think we could look that up for like a one bedroom apartment, for instance.
Okay. Here's Zumper. Zumper has a studio in Los Angeles for, should we round this number to 18? How's 1,800? Damn.
Yeah, I hardly ever see studios, to be honest, but
That is a lot.
I guess they exist.
A one bedroom, if we round this number up, is 2,400 a month. In a two bedroom, 3,200 a month. Let's focus on the one bedroom, no? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good.
That is a lot of money for a one bedroom apartment. $2,400.
Yeah, $2,400. That's the median. So there's going to be a lot. There's going to be some lower than that, and then a lot higher than that as well.
Yeah, you're right.
You and I were also talking about the fact that we were both property managers recently. We were working in that line of work, and
Yes, sir.
part of that job entailed leasing out empty apartments, vacant units. And from my experience, I remember that we rented out apartments down in Long Beach that were really nice, close to the water. And then down the line, right, we had some apartments that were not too far from where we are now, but they're in areas that they're not really that nice. They're right next to a highway. You can just tell it's not really kept as clean. It doesn't feel quite as safe. I remember actually one of our maintenance guys, he was talking about collecting coins from the laundry machine because different apartment buildings would have laundry machines, laundry rooms. So somebody has to pick up those coins and take it to the bank. And he was saying, for the first few times, let me do it because these areas are a little bit sketchier. I don't want the new property managers to be going to pick up the coin in these particular areas. So just to give you an idea, right? It's like different areas have a different level of appeal in different ways. And at that time, I think the cheapest apartment that we put for lease out of all the apartments that I managed was in one of these areas. One of these areas is a little bit sketchier, not really close to a lot of jobs, universities, or anything like that. And so that one was going for like I think it was $1,750.
$1,750.
Yeah. So roughly around $1,600 to $1,700 in a rougher area is like, that's on the low end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that figure, I think, makes a lot of sense. 2,300 to live in a
The
decent
figure on
area.
Zumper, you mean?
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, if it was $1,750, this is only $60 more.
Right. Right, and that's for a studio. And again, since that's a median, right, there's some that are lower, some that are higher.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, I just bring that up because for a low-end apartment, you're paying about $1,600 to $1,700, and then if you're going to like a decent one, it's very common to have like a $2,400 apartment, one bedroom, right? And so, just doing some quick math, if that is supposed to be only a third of your income, then what was it, $2,350?
Yeah.
if you multiply that by 3, then that means your take-home pay, like your actual paycheck that you get to spend on whatever you want, should be $7,050.
And the reason that you're multiplying the average one bedroom apartment in LA by 3 is because 2350 is 1/3. Therefore, your rent should be 1/3
Yeah.
of your income. So does that give us a gross amount, or does that give us a take home amount?
This gives us a take-home amount. So to look at it in reverse, right? The way I have it on my calculator here is $7,050 is the final figure. Okay? So imagine that number. That's your take-home pay. That's the amount that you got in your check that you can actually spend. It's not the gross, because you can't spend all of your gross pay. Some of it has to go to taxes. So the amount that you actually receive in your pocket is $7,050 per month. If you want to live within that 1/3 rule, where 1/3 of your rent is only 1/3 of that pay, then you divide $7,050 by 3, and you end up with that 1/3 figure, which is $2,350.
That makes sense.
So I use $2,350 instead of $2,365, but close enough.
Close enough.
Yeah. So that apartment requires that you make $7,000 roughly per month in take-home pay.
In take-home pay. Now, if the average, let's use an example of a single person, right? The single person is being taxed $1,200 a month from their gross salary, knowing that our take-home salary should be 7,000, close to 7,000 a month. What should our gross salary then be if we add 1,200 to that?
If you add 1,200 to that, that's $8,250.
So $8,200 in salary.
And if you multiply that by 12, that's a salary. That's an annual salary of $99,000 gross.
Which goes back to your article. Could you put the article back up?
Yeah, nearly 6 figures basically. This one is saying almost 150,000, but the sentiment is still there. Once you're getting towards 6 figures.
Damn.
Yeah, and that figure is right here, $149,310 to be happy in California. And obviously that, that's a very subjective thing too, right? It even mentions in this article, like what does happiness mean? It's a very subjective thing that varies from person to person.
Kind of like living comfortably will, be different person to person. If you're comfortable living in a not so desirable area, then you might need to make less than, what was the number? $8,000 a month. But if you want to live in a more desirable area, say for example where we are right now, then your income, gross income, should be close to $8,000 a month.
Right. Yeah. So and that's a lot. I mean, that's
Let's go make some money then, dude.
And I mean, I guess also too, you can think your rent, you can split that with somebody. If you have a significant other, it obviously makes things a ton easier. It divides everything by 2, right? Because it's halved between 2 people. But that's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow, because if you're a single person, you don't have a significant other. One, you kind of need a roommate, which is fair. Like, it's not uncommon to have a roommate, split things with people. It would obviously be ideal to be able to afford a place on your own without having to make 6 figures. But I think it's just, to me, I thought it was eye-opening because it speaks to this idea that if you are not making that much money, and especially if you don't have somebody that's willing to split everything 50-50 with you, right?
Right.
If you're not making that much money, then it really forces you to rethink, like, am I in the right place?
Right.
One thing you and I were talking about is, like, you can live in California. Plenty of people do. I make less than 6 figures. And so I can live in California, but then I'm kind of getting away from those rules, right? The 50-30-20 rule, that 1/3 rule. In many cases, for instance, in my past, I've been paying half of my paycheck to rent. Or actually even more, I think. There was one time I was really just, I gave myself a year to kind of live a little nicer.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew it was going to be temporary, and I was paying more than half of my paycheck to rent. The downside to that is, okay, less goes into savings. Less
Less
goes
goes into
into
savings.
going to restaurants and wherever else you might want
You
to go.
couldn't eat at Nobu every weekend.
Yeah.
Damn. Just to kind of wrap things up, right? The average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment was about $23.50. We said, right? Which then, if we ask the question again, then right, how much money do you need to comfortably live in Los Angeles? That figure we came up with was
To the $149,000 figure?
no the one that we came up with while we were doing all the math.
Oh,
with,
for us? Per year or per month?
per month.
Per month was 8,200, I think.
82?
Yeah. 8,250.
82.50. All right. Well, then again, that gives us an answer. If you want to live comfortably in LA, in a desirable area, then you need to make at least $8,250 in gross pay. Mm-hmm. Hey, it's a lot of money, man.
Yeah, yeah. Or again, like have a significant other and then everything's cut in half.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, it's expensive to live in California, and it prompts a lot of questions in my mind about whether that's worth it. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, last year was a record number of people leaving California. Companies also, right?
Yeah.
Did Tesla end up leaving?
You know what they did, but and don't quote me on this. I think I just saw an article where he met with Gavin Newsom. They were he was talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
coming back to California.
I mean, the sun's pretty good out here.
Yeah, that actually should be a video that we do in the future because
Let's do it.
you know, the whole idea of like living in California is a fascinating topic that people go back and forth with a lot. And no matter how expensive it seems to be, it's really hard to leave. And even if people or companies do leave, there's a lot to replace them because everybody wants the weather. Everybody wants the sunshine. So
Everybody wants the weather, the sunshine, the
yeah,
people.
that's what makes it tough. But there are alternative ways to live, alternative places to live, and don't require a 6-figure salary.
Yeah. I mean, you could be homeless in LA, technically.
Very much
You
so.
are
Yeah,
living
that
in
happens.
LA.
Actually, that's a result of the cost of living for sure.
Right. Yeah, man. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. We got to a figure that's 8250. This is the money perspective. I'm Eduardo.
And I'm Brandon.
Thank you so much for your time.
See you next time.